Hello and welcome to this show. I'm your host. The United States inflation remains muted. Consumer prices barely moved in January, and the 12-month change was the smallest since December of 2021. The so-called real wages, which is the wage growth adjusted for inflation, increased for the first time since August of 2021, so that's good news. It means people's paychecks are finally outpacing the rising prices. What's also interesting is that tariffs appear to have had a very limited effect on prices so far. The data does suggest that price increases are still being driven mostly by wage increases. So it looks like the Fed's policy tightening is working. Inflation expectations are also falling, which should help to keep price increases going. According to the Michigan survey, the 12-month inflation expectations dropped to 3.6%, the lowest reading since April of 2021. Of course, the market will be looking ahead to Friday's jobs report for more clues about the strength of the labor market and the future direction of monetary policy. Let's have a look at the details. So the consumer price index was unchanged in January and rose 0.5% from a year ago. That's the smallest 12-month increase since December of 2021, and it follows increases of 0.3% in December and 0.1% in November. The data also showed that the cost of services, which account for a large portion of the index, rose 0.4% in January from the prior month and 3.3% from a year ago. That marked the smallest year-on-year increase since April of 2021. Excluding the volatile food and energy prices, the so-called core CPI also rose 0.4% in January from the prior month and 3.6% from a year ago, which was the smallest year-on-year increase since November of 2021. Wages rose 0.3% in January from the prior month and increased 4.6% from a year ago, the biggest gain since February of 2022. And that suggests that price increases are still being driven mostly by wage increases. Now, inflation-adjusted average hourly earnings, so that's the real wages we were talking about earlier, rose 0.2% in January from the prior month and increased 1.8% from a year ago, the first increase since August of 2021. Meanwhile, the University of Michigan's preliminary index of consumer sentiment rose to 67.2 in February from 64.9 in January. That was the highest reading since January of 2022, and the 12-month inflation expectations dropped to 3.6%, the lowest reading since April of 2021. So the bottom line is the Fed's policy tightening is working. Will the Fed be able to bring down inflation to 2%? Or do you think that they will be forced to pivot due to financial instability? And if you like this video, you might also enjoy our free newsletter that recaps the key events and economic data that you might have missed during the week. You can subscribe using the link below.